Well, welcome to another episode of WFCF-TV, the Florida Chamber of Commerce Foundation blog videocast. I wanted to spend a little time today with our dear friend Shelley Lauten, who's the president of myregion.org, basically bringing the folks of Central Florida together around economic development and seeing their future in a different way. Shelley, you're a pioneer in this whole regionalism thing. I think it's safe to say that it's caught on. Wanted to first thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me. It's always a joy.
It's good to have you. I can't wait to see what wisdom you're going to share with us. What got this going? How do you pioneer regionalism in an area that until then really wasn't known for wanting to cooperate?
We actually, now that we look back, it's so funny to think about, but we didn't even call ourselves Central Florida back when we started in 1999. We actually, my boss, Jacob Stewart, who at that time was running the Orlando Regional Chamber, had been talking to business leaders all over the region, and it was the turn of the century, 1999, and Jacob started hearing that we could not be solving our issues the same way we always had. So we got curious and started looking around the United States and stumbled on this whole idea of, maybe if we started working together across county boundaries, maybe we could get different results. And that's really how it began.
How did two people like Jacob Stewart, my liege, my mentor, just a name that you associate with seeing things in a different way and creating new paths, how does a Jacob Stewart find a Shelley Lauten, who is a person who can take that and run with it and get it done? Tell us about how you guys got together.
Well, I had worked at Disney for many years, and his wife and I actually were very, very dear friends, and I knew Jacob socially, but I didn't know him professionally. And I was at a crossroads in my life, and he was getting ready to launch a new project, actually before my region, that I came in to help him with, because I was looking for something beyond the corporate world where I could get back into community building. When it's funny when I hear you and Mark talk about the whole idea of where's Florida's strategic plan, I can remember saying to Jacob when he said, Shelley, we're kind of thinking about building this regional issue, and I had a bit of a strategic planning background, and my first question was, okay, great, where's the community's strategic plan? And he went, what? And so that really started our journey. My background in thinking long-term, thinking about corporate ways to seek solutions, and we tried to apply many of those principles to building myregion.org.
You talked about long-term vision and the role of the foundation looking 2 to 20 years out, the 6 Pillars caucus system, and bringing folks together and trying to have that perspective long-term. As somebody that does this so well, what are the biggest challenges to get people to look beyond the immediate problem and understand that the future talk is a different kind of conversation?
Trust. That first and foremost in my mind, it's trust. And I think it was really interesting, again, when we started this, it started as under the auspices of the Orlando Regional Chamber. We learned very quickly that we needed to build some partnerships and some bridges to our elected officials and our government partners in the community, because that trust had not been built before. Government didn't necessarily trust business, and business didn't necessarily trust government. So we had to figure out a process and an approach where we could really spend some time getting leaders together to understand one another and understand where we wanted to go together.
Tell me about the mechanics of that, because one of if there's a criticism that I hear most often about the 6 Pillars caucus system is that we're too idealistic and we're too naive, because anymore everyone is ideologically just dug in, and you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican, or you're a Libertarian and Independent, and it's you and me and you and me, and this ad hominem kind of arguments anymore. Again, myregion.org has been very successful in getting folks in your respective counties to to build that trust. But what are the mechanics of that? How do you get past the dug-in positions?
Well, very early on, we made a decision that as an organization, we would not advocate for positions. The only position we would advocate for were regional solutions. What that regional solution was based on leaders coming together, making decisions first and foremost, collectively. But that takes time. And I do remember one of the criticisms we had very early on, and I would still say some would argue that all we are is one big kumbaya, that we get people together, and I say, yes, that's exactly what we do, and that's okay.
Sure.
So building trust was really critical. That takes time. We weren't apologetic about it. We stayed the course, and we did not back off the idea that bringing people together, and it was okay. I mean, we really sought out disparate points of view, making sure that people across all spectrums, Democrat to Republican, every form and fashion of thinking and background and experience. We spent 6 months thinking about the leadership structure that needed to come to the table before we even started the project.
Sure. Well, short of making this a cathartic or a counseling session for me personally, I do want to ask this question. When you talk about the expectation for immediate results and this lip service to long-term thinking, but they want you to show progress immediately, those types of things. What do you do with the criticism? How do you fight those folks? There are no shortage of people that are going to tell you that myregion.org is going to fail. There are no shortage of people that absolutely expect the 6 pillars caucus system and the entire framework to collapse and all this type of thing. How do you get up in the morning and keep going?
You use a word that I've been using since the turn of the century, and we had a couple people before you and me use this, and that's a framework. And just like our government started with a framework, we are using a framework, and now we are using your framework, your vocabulary, to help people make decisions. And as the more we can be, again, unapologetic, that the framework is what's important. And then different organizations who buy into that framework will get the results that we want. And I'll give you a great example in Central Florida,
Sure.
Sunrail. Our commuter rail system, we have been working in Central Florida well before the turn of the century in myregion.org. But I will argue that we have now become successful because we have leaders in Central Florida across 7 counties who are committed to the framework that we built as part of myregion.org. So before, it was very easy to divide and conquer. It's much more difficult in Central Florida to divide and conquer us. That's why, again, I'm so excited about a Florida framework, because I still think, and I just heard this the other day, that I find this very interesting to my friends in Miami. I apologize for this, but I heard that there are some who believe that Miami and Orlando are competitors. And I think, how silly is that? We as Floridians, we need to think about how we build one another and how we support one another. And I am convinced if we have this framework for Florida that you are leading, we're going to get better at that. We are going to get better at that.
Well, I appreciate you acknowledging that, because that in part is my answer as well, is that it is the framework, and it is the essence of the system, that it is driven by the business community and community leaders and not-for-profits as well as for-profits getting together, committed to not a person, not committed to a group of people, but committed to the framework and that discussion. Because eventually Shelley Lauten is going to move on and do something different, and the foundation is going to change at some point, all those types of things. But the people that are committed to the framework, that's where you have continuity, and I think that's key.
It's absolutely key, and I would also say, and I would believe, I do believe my elected officials in Central Florida would say this too, it needs to be business-led, so that it goes beyond one political or 2 political or how many political cycles that you talk about. We're now 12 years old, and we still have lots of work to do. We may have been the first, that doesn't make us the best. There are many regional efforts throughout Florida that are working really hard to build their own framework. And I'm hoping, again, that we can weave these frameworks together so that Florida has a framework.
Sure.
And so that we can really strategically think about the future of Florida.
A topic that I do want to hit on, I appreciate you giving me the segue, is the connection to your elected officials. And this natural tension, I think it's a healthy tension between the business community and the elected government and those types of things, where I don't know that I think it's unhealthy to talk about it as adversarial. I think that that's wasted energy.
Correct.
Right? You agree with that?
I agree.
Today I was just blown away by a conversation we visited an editorial board of a major newspaper in the state of Florida today before we came here to visit with you, and they asked, well, why do this scorecard thing, and why worry about this 6 post caucusing, because in the end, how do you convince elected officials it's all up to them? And I was just amazed that a member of the Fourth Estate was abdicating the future of the state alone to the political system. Mm-hmm. And I think that what you've been successful at, and I guess I want to form this into a question, what was key in getting the buy-in of your elected officials so they didn't see this as adversarial, but you also didn't abdicate complete control to, well, we trust you, you guys take care of it, and we'll just sit here?
That's a good question. I think we were confident, first of all, that it takes all three sectors in the 21st century to make it work. And so having that confidence that the business community can't do it alone, government can't do it alone, the civic community certainly needs both of the other two sectors. So that philosophy to begin with really strengthened our cause. And because we invited people to the table and kind of said, put down your swords, we're all trying to figure out what's going to be best for Central Florida. We also did a lot of research. So again, to underscore the work that you're doing for us across the state, if it's not based on fact, we did not want to deal with it. We spent a lot of time in our early years, and still as we bring new people in, to move past anecdote and really used fact-based information. That's why I'm so excited about the Florida Scorecard, because again, we can use that information in a very timely, real life situation to pull up and say, here's how the 7 counties of Central Florida are doing on X, Y, or Z. We can't fight that. Now, how do we solve it? If that's what we all agree are the facts, how do we work together to address that fact, whatever it is?
Sure, I'm thinking about one of the first things you learn is the power in naming something, right? That even in childhood, that when a child points at something, and then the power that is when you can name it, and until you name the problem. And I think that data available at, by the way, www.thefloridascorecard.com.
Go to it if you have not yet seen it.
Take a look, but when you can point at the problem, then you're right. Then again, these varying opinions can still come together. Right. And it's not always a kumbaya, right?
No.
But let's find the low-hanging fruit, let's work together and get it done.
I have a very dear friend who is elected official, and she has been with the My Region process since she got elected over 8 years ago. And she now has a new elected official role, but she always says, and it's such a high compliment for the work that we're trying to do, is there are very few places where she feels as an elected official she can come and have an honest conversation, and that's what she feels about myregion.org. We've set that table so that people come and we have tough debates, and we don't always agree on what the initial outcome should be, but our goal is to, at some point, get to something that we can all agree needs to move forward.
Sure, and an informed conversation around data is better than, as you said, a conversation around anecdote.
That's correct.
Fantastic. Shelley, I want to thank you for time together.
You're so welcome.
We're here with Shelley Lauten, who is the president of myregion.org. Pretty easy if you want to visit that website and learn more about one of the early pioneers in regionalism and demonstrating how it works and the counties that are involved in that. I invite you to go to myregion.org and stay tuned for another episode coming up of WFCF-TV, the Florida Chamber Foundation's blog video cast.